I'm not sure what should be done to keep the park and in what way it should be shaped and envisioned. But I had an office around the corner from the park, and I'd like it to become a place where a woman at night can walk across the park and feel safe.
It's not simply the past. There are 1,000 of our neighbors who are unhoused in the city of Berkeley. And the city has approximately 150 shelter beds. Right? To me, this is an incredible disgrace and stain on our society, and particularly a place like Berkeley, which claims to be a progressive city. We need to find space for them. As part of the case that I'm working on, the judge ordered us to identify places where people could stay, not on the sidewalk, not where they're kicked out into the street every day or every other day, not where they freeze, not where they get sick. We've already had 6 homeless people die in the city of Berkeley this year. Think about that. These are our neighbors. They're not Martians. They are people like us, like our family members. People's Park is a place that could house 30, yeah, there's tons of sites in the city of Berkeley, but the city will not cooperate with this effort. And to me, a legacy of People's Park is that we need to fight for the kind of decency that our society owes everyone.
I agree with everyone who wants to bring back the park and the spirit and the vision that we had 50 years ago. I agree with Dan that people who are homeless need housing and jobs and mental health care and whatever they need to make a life that is not on the streets and is not having to sleep in the parks. I can't imagine what it must be like to be homeless on a day like this. But I also want to point out that students should not have to drive 2.5 hours to find a place where they can afford to live. Please don't interrupt. You'll have your chance. I'm about to talk about money, if you'll give me a chance. Please do not interrupt. I would like to say that the issue comes down literally to millions of dollars. Literally to millions of dollars. Now, where could that money come from? Who has some great ideas? I see. I don't know if you saw. There was a map in Berkeley side that showed where the really wealthy people lived in the hills. Maybe there could be an extra tax on people of incomes of a certain amount. Maybe there could. But tell me, where does the money come from? This is the question. I'm not an economist. All right, you're being kind of rude. Where does the money come from to help people who are homeless and to find appropriate, ecologically appropriate? It doesn't come from the sky, sweetheart. So that is my concern. My concern is how we address all these issues. And I'll tell you something, yelling is not going to get you anywhere.
So we'll just sit here quietly. That's a really good strategy.
No, I'd like to give the person with the quietest voice in this room a chance to speak. That would be Jane Shear, who has the smallest, quietest voice and has some wisdom that she might be able to impart. So I'd like to request kindly that you sit down and wait till the panel's finished speaking, and then we'll have a chance to carry on. you can speak in a haiku. Jane.
I don't really have a vision as
Speak. You have to speak into the microphone, Jane.
I don't have a vision. At one point, the university seemed to be making the park into, well, at any rate, I really don't have a vision for it. I'm sorry.
Dove.
I really came here to speak about People's Park 50 years ago. I'm not very informed about the various issues that a lot of people are very informed about here.
That's the problem. Y'all don't know anything about anything that's going on right now. What's going on right now?
You're out of line, baby. You're out of line.
And I don't really feel like talking when people are screaming at me. So I think I'm going to just pass.
Okay, I'll wait.
Well, number one, we do need to keep that park, and I think it would be very important to try to find a strategy. I agree with people who are saying the strategy is not to yell at each other here in this room, okay? But we ought to have a strategy, and that it ought to include many of us going to the chancellor of the university on the one hand, and going to the city council on the other hand, and really trying to show that there's a real significant group of people who are citizens of this city who want a different something. I also want to say that Jesse is not Ronald Reagan or, God forbid, Donald Trump. He's not an enemy, okay? Okay, he's not. He's not an enemy. He has a different background than some of the people here. Some of us. He comes from a different background. He has a different set of realities that he's dealing with. He's not a bad person. He's somebody that can be reasoned with and talked to, and that's what we should be doing. I also agree with Dan that talking is one thing, and exercising political power is something else. And we ought to both talk in a reasonable way, and we ought to organize political power in a way that pushes people who are going to be up again for election to know that those who supported him and others in the past may not be able to do that again if there isn't a sign of real courage coming from the leadership and the mayor.
I'll be brief. I confess that I'm too pessimistic to have thought a lot about a vision for the park because I just don't think it's ever going to happen, whatever. Sorry to be a downer, but I just, that's my experience, that they're just never going to let anything like a park happen, really. I hope I'm wrong, of course, but I haven't sort of created a vision of what it can be because I think it's going to wind up to be a small section of green next to a dorm.
So I just want to address the point that Mr. Siegel made, which I agree that our homeless crisis really is, if I can please answer, really is a failure of our society. And the city of Berkeley takes this issue very seriously. I can't speak to the lawsuit that Mr. Siegel talked about, as that's pending litigation. But when I became mayor, we doubled the number of shelter beds. We've opened a navigation center. We provide more money per capita than any other city in Alameda County to address the homeless crisis. We're working with Alameda County and the state to increase resources for permanent supportive housing, for mental health treatment, because I agree, it's unacceptable for people to live on the street. And we have many people throughout the day that live in the park, during the day and in the evening. I think that they should have permanent housing. And so I do support the university's plan to build permanent supportive housing on People's Park for the homeless, as well as housing for students and preserving some open space. And I think that we can preserve and honor the history of the park, but create homes for people to get off the street and to get into permanent housing.
And then once again, he hands me the microphone. Thank you. I think I've made myself clear earlier when I said save the park. Here's the deal, guys. Civility works. I've been, since all of my career, in fact, I know why Steve brought me here tonight, because he knew he might have needed the National Guard here in the room. But in all of my work, you know, it focuses on leadership. And I can say this, is most people in this room are true leaders, because you've shown up. I mean, this is my recipe for leadership. You show up out there openly, honestly, and authentically, and civilly. You step up. You're creative with what you need to have gotten done in your city. And that means saving the park in a creative, innovative way. And you speak up, and you guys are certainly willing to do that. And most necessary with leadership is to serve others. And everyone in this room, at one point in your life, you've done all those things. So come together as a community. I'm not in this community. I live across the bay, but I live in the Bay Area. And Berkeley has always meant to me a place of progressivism. And I left a little piece of me here, guys, over there at Sather Gate. So do it right, but get it done, and save the park.
I don't think I'm a stakeholder, except in a very minor way, perhaps. I